Hi, I'm Rick Drasin, Rick Drasin's Wrestling School. This is Rick's Corner. I got here Almighty Ray, who's one of my wrestling students, has been around for a while. Ray, what got you interested in pro wrestling?
Oh man, in the first place, pro wrestling was just something, and it was on TV, it was exciting, it was colorful, because I was watching back in the late 80s, early 90s, when the characters were, I mean, even more elaborate than they were today. I mean, they were just out there. Like, it seemed like every wrestler had a day job, you know, the guy was working as a garbage man or a hockey player or what have you, and it was just all these exciting different elements all being brought together in one passion play of life. And not to mention the physicalization of it, the storytelling of it. It's just a lot of color and a lot of, you know, yeah, good stuff.
It was a lot different back then, wasn't it?
Oh, completely different back then.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game today. I mean, it's very marketable today, and they do a good job of marketing it and selling the fans. But these guys come out of the ring like cookie cutters. You know, they're all like pretty much the same as far as looks. Even in the 80s, they were different with Tugboat and some of those outlandish characters.
Earthquake and all
right.
them, yeah.
But today, I just don't understand. I mean, it draws an audience, but the audience looks bored to me. I still think that the old school style is better. Even the 70s and 80s were good, but back in the 50s and 60s when I was doing it in the 60s, there were a lot like Freddie Blassie and Mr. Moto and all these guys, and the Sheik back in Detroit. Who was it? The Butcher Vachon, and then you had the Crusher and the Destroyer. I mean, these guys were great wrestlers. They knew how to put on a show and get the crowd nuts, and that's what we aim at out here. I mean, we do all our holds and stuff, but working the crowd and the selling is a big point of it. Now, you're also an actor.
That's correct.
You also do stand-up comedy.
I do it all.
And this adds to your wrestling repertoire as well as that, right?
It's one good thing. One thing that I think really helped is doing a lot of improv comedy.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, you make it up off the top of your head, and it's a really cool thing when you're in the ring. And sometimes when things happen on the outside of the ring, I can see with some of the students and even some of the less what's the word I'm looking for?
Less experienced.
Experienced wrestlers in there. Something will happen outside the ring, or someone will yell something at them, or something will go wrong, or just something strange will happen, and they'll have absolutely no idea how to react to it or what to do, and it makes them look like less of a performer, makes them look weaker as a result. But one thing that I found that's helped me is through the improv background, is that when something happens, I'm just ready to fly with it right away and just immediately make a choice and go with it. You know, I can remember one time someone was giving me a clothesline not that long ago in one of the videos, and he ended up missing the clothesline. However, you know, he wasn't, you know, I wasn't expecting that. So I just immediately sat down and stood up like, hey, I'm smarter than you. You missed the clothesline, where I think a lot, not a lot, but maybe other less experienced students would have all of a sudden pretended like it had hit, even though everybody clearly saw that it didn't.
Well, that's what's so important, because you're telling a story out there. Now, I heard just recently, actually today, that the WWE developmental this past week in Florida, that I had a friend down there, we had a mutual friend down there watching them, and that they were told to get in the ring and just go. They weren't allowed to plan their match. They weren't allowed to talk it out. They had to call it like we do here, call it as it goes, as it goes, as it goes. And a lot of the indie shows around here, a lot of the wrestlers want to sit in the dressing room and plan out 20 minutes, and you can't do it. You just forget every move you want to do, and you just go crazy out there. It's hard to memorize all that. If you watch these dance shows, I mean, these people work on routines, and they have dance routines, yes. But if they screw up, they have to cover themselves right away. It's the same thing with wrestling. If you screw up in a match and something doesn't go right, you don't do it again. We had a guy here, a couple of weeks ago that did that with Fernando and landed on his head, and did it again and landed on his head.
And said it twice.
Yeah, I mean,
knocked Fernando right unconscious.
If you don't do it the first time, don't do it again, because it looks bad. So these are just points. I know you hear my points a lot on YouTube, but you need to hear the points of these guys as well, because it gives you a little bit of a variation on what everybody's thinking. Yeah,
I could say one thing about that is these people that try to plan out like 20-minute matches, move for move, literally hold for hold, and then you're going to reverse this and throw this. And that's all well and good, I suppose, if you have a great deal of time to practice it over and over again and get it to be rote memorization. But in practice, from what I've found, is the more that you try to plan, the more that's going to get stuck in your head, and you're just going to get completely lost in what you're doing. And then when you're trying to think of what am I supposed to do, according to what we figured out, as opposed to what am I supposed to do based on the moment and based on the situation and based on the crowd and everything else and the things you should actually be caring about. It's like a football coach, if I may say. Like, they might plan out the first 10 plays of the game, but from there they open it up to go wherever it needs to go from there based on what's a winning strategy. the coach does not plan out every single play for an entire game. I don't think a wrestling match should be planned out every single move for the entire game, because the circumstances and situations change.
Things change, and the audience goes in a different direction. They're not getting it, and so you have to change it for the audience to understand what's going on.
Yeah, like what happens if there's a brawl in the stands and everybody's focusing on the brawl? Well, then you can't be doing all your high impact stuff while everybody's paying attention to the brawl out here, because nobody cares. That's when you got to take a moment. You got to slow it down.
And that's happened. And there's been times.
the time.
There's been times when the top rope breaks and you can't use the rope. You better know how to wrestle, because you can't bounce off the ropes or do anything after that point. Now, you also have asked me about ladders and chairs and how we use them in the ring. And I said it's not part of wrestling.
Wow.
There's no need for that. That's the hardcore ECW stuff, or not even ECW anymore. It was done for years just on indie shows, mainly because they need to get the attention of the crowd, because they were losing them, because they weren't doing anything in the ring that kept their attention. So they went to another level. That's no different than Vince McMahon bringing his Corvette in and putting cement inside of it. That's not part of wrestling, or riding your Harley around the ring. So no, we don't use ladders and chairs. I don't advocate it. You stick to wrestling. If you believe in yourself as a character, right, and you 100%. Have what it takes as a character, you'll make the people like you. You've got to give them something interesting to see, something about you that they would pay money to come see you. Think about that when you look in the mirror and you tell me you want to be a wrestler. Are you interesting enough to have someone pay a ticket to see you? Because that's what it's all about. Right, Ray?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see one thing, some of these videos that I've seen that you've sent in, or that have been sent in to you, is these people are trying to show off their character. And all they're doing is walking down their living room hallway with a cape on, and then they stand there and then just look off. I mean, you know what? Yeah. If you're an established character, if you're a Rock, if you're a Triple H or somebody, you can get away with standing there and looking off. If you're not, if you're just some guy I don't know from Larry, you're going to look like a douche. That's all you're going to look like.
That's right.
And I don't pay money to see douches wrestle. Sorry.
Well, I'm Rick Drasin. This is Rick's Corner. Every week, like I said, we're going to have a different character. This has been Almighty Ray, and he's done a good job of letting you guys know what wrestling's all about. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.